Hello and welcome to part one of this three-part series in PMP exam prep, or what I wish I would have known while preparing for the PMP exam. In part one, we're going to do the general test. Now that you've decided to take the test or you're contemplating taking the test, what should you expect from this process? In part two, we're going to go over the exact types of questions that you can expect to see on the test, how to interpret them, how to approach them. And in part three, we're going to wrap up with the PMP test material itself, how to better understand the material as you're going through it, and some tools at your disposal that it'd be better if you knew of before or sooner rather than later. Who am I? I'm Stephen Mitchell. I recently received my PMP certification. This is simply things that there were hiccups along the way that it took me a while to figure out before I had that aha moment. And hopefully, by passing this information on to you, and your test preparation will be a little bit more streamlined. And it's things that, although they're said a lot, they're not clearly stated. So I just want to hopefully clarify or give you a different explanation that'll help you understand it earlier in your process. So let's get started. So congratulations on making this decision. Logic would tell you that in a 4-hour test that has 200 questions, that you should take an average of 1 minute and 12 seconds per question. And logic would also tell you that if you're trying to pace yourself during this test, you should be complete at least to question 50 by the end of the first hour. Halfway through the test is question 100, and then 150 and 200 and so forth. This logic is not accurate. It may be correct, but it's not accurate, and it's not a plan that you should use for your target. So let's explain why. A lot of you may not have taken a test in this type of facility before. It may be a Prometrics or another company that gives standardized tests as part of their process. That's what they do. They just give standardized tests, and you sign up for the PMP, you're going to be in a room with a lot of other people who are taking different tests. Simply going in and out of this room takes time. And I can give the example of, it's like you're boarding a plane and you need to go through security. It is literally like TSA minus the scanning machine. What do I mean by that? They need to keep this room as secure as they can. It's what they do, and it's what they should do. So you're going to go, you're going to show the front of your hands, the back of your hands. They're going to make you raise your sleeves. They're going to make you show the inside of your belt buckle, put your hands in your pocket. If you're wearing jeans, you need to put your hand in that small side pocket that you probably never use. Turn around, put your hands in your pockets, take them out, raise your left leg, raise your right leg. Let me see your socks. Any jewelry you have, take it off. If they let you wear anything at all, maybe a wedding ring or a small chain may do. The point is, this process takes time. And if you're taking a break and you're going back into the room, and while you're doing all this, your computer is in the room and the clock is going. The 4 hours is counting down. So already you've messed up your minute and 12 seconds physically traversing the door to get in and out of the room. The second thing that they tell you is that your brain dump, which you should do it before you start the test. While that is a true statement, you should do it before you start the test. It's not an accurate statement. And what I mean by it is this. The first 10 minutes after you sit down at your computer is the tutorial that they'll give you. What is in the tutorial? The tutorial is telling you how to highlight something in the question. It's telling you how to strike out something in the question if you want to narrow your options down, how to use the calculator, just things that you shouldn't be using your test time to fumble around with. However, you cannot use this time for your brain dump. Your brain dump starts when your test time begins. So let's say it takes you 10 minutes, you prepared, you've done your brain dump 50 times, you know it's going to take you 10 minutes to do your brain dump. If it takes you 10 minutes for the start of the time, your minute and 12 seconds is already out the window. So let's see what a model, what is an accurate model that you should be aiming for. So what do you want to do during the test? Well, we've already said that you want to do the brain dump. I'm going to say 15 minutes for this example. So it may take you 10 minutes while you're at your house and you've done it 50 times. This is the brain dump. This is not a brain dump. you're in the test, your nerves may be a little worked up. You want to make sure that this is the one that's correct. So it may take you another minute or two longer than what you have anticipated. But for this example, let's just say it takes you 15 minutes to do the brain dump. We talked about breaks. How long? We know it's going to take you a minimum amount of time to simply go out of the room, write your name down, write the time. Let's just say for this example, a break takes 10 minutes, 5 minutes on your actual break, and 5 minutes to get in and out of the room. And let's say you take 2 breaks. So there's your 2 10-minute break. What else do you want to do? You want to leave some time at the end of the test. Like I said, you don't want to be wrapping up right as the clock hits 0. So let's say review time is going to take you 5 minutes. Let's circle this 5 minutes because we're going to double back on this. So we can explain that in a little more detail. Let's add another 10 minutes to this for miscellaneous time. That is 50 minutes. 50 minutes has just been reduced like that. Your minute and 12 seconds is out of the window. Now, that leaves you 3 hours and 10 minutes of actual test taking time. If you use this as your example, that's an average of 57 seconds per question. Now, 57 seconds may not sound that different from your minute and 12 seconds, but let me show you really quick how that adds up. Let's go back and see how you would do the test in hour by hour format. Hour 1, you're going to start your brain dump. Is going to take, in this case, 15 minutes. If you took 57 seconds per question, by the end of the first hour, you should be roughly on question number 47. What happens in hour 2? If you took the entire hour to do questions at 57 seconds a question, you're going to be roughly on question 110. What happens at the beginning of hour 3? Well, you wanted to take a break at the halfway mark. So the beginning of hour 3 is going to be your first break, which is 10 minutes. Then you're going to have 50 minutes in that third hour to answer questions. So by the end of hour 3, in this example, you're going to be roughly on question 163. What happens in hour 4? Hour 4, you're going to take another break because we say we want to plan 2 breaks. You're going to go in the home stretch and make sure you're refreshed and you're energetic and you're ready to go finish it out. So your second break is going to take you 10 minutes. Break number 2. At 57 seconds a question, you're going to finish up the 200 questions. What does this leave you? It leaves you 5 minutes of review time and your 10 minutes of miscellaneous. Now, you may still have that 10 minutes available to you in miscellaneous, or you took a longer break than you originally planned. You just wanted to decompress a little bit more, or it took you longer to get in the room than you originally planned. The point is, we've already worked this in, so there's no need if something happens during the test or it takes you too long, you're going to start stressing out, which you don't want to do. Now, this 5 minutes, where do I get that 5 minutes from? Well, you get that 5 minutes from the practice test that you've already been taking. You know, or you should have an idea of your practice test. You had to go back and answer 3 questions, 5 questions, 10 questions. Doesn't matter how many, as long as you know. So you work that into what I'm going to call your 57 seconds. So in this example, we had 57 seconds per question. In your 57 seconds, it may be longer, shorter, whatever your 57 seconds is, you know that going in. So take your 57 seconds, multiply it by the number of questions you want to leave yourself, and go ahead and do that. Now, what are you going to train? What are you going to practice while you're preparing for the actual test? Your 57 seconds, you need to know what that feels like. And the analogy that I'll give is that of a quarterback. When a quarterback hikes the ball, he has roughly 4 seconds, maybe five, but he has roughly 4 seconds before he has to do something. He has to pass the ball, run it, do something else because he cannot stand there forever. What happens after 4 seconds? There may be somebody behind him while he's looking downfield that he doesn't see ready to tackle him. There may be somebody right in his face that his offensive lineman can't hold off for another second or a second and a half. He has an internal clock where they know 4 seconds is up, I have to do something. You need to have that same internal clock for your 57 seconds. Time yourself. Sit in a room, quiet. Start your stopwatch. Sit there and wait. Stop it when you think your 57 seconds was up and see what it was like. On the test, time just goes by sometimes a little faster than you actually think. When you're doing a question, we'll get into this in parts 2 and 3, you need to move on. So when do you move on? When your 57 seconds is up is when you move on. So when you have a question on the test that you think is easy and you answered it right away, don't hit the next button so fast. Sit there and wait to when you think your 57 seconds is up and then move on and mark that question. You can do a lap function on your stopwatch as you hit the next button, hit the lap. So you go over your test and you can say question 1 took me this amount of time, this amount of time. You need to be averaging what your internal clock is. So practice that format. When you're practicing your test, don't just go out, get a drink of water, come back in. When you leave the room for that break, don't come back for 10 minutes. You'll start to train yourself so when you get to the exam, you're cool, calm, and collected because you got the right model, you're confident that it works, and that's what you're going to use. So that's what you need to practice. A few more things to think about during the test is your scratch paper. You don't get an unlimited amount of scratch paper, so if you get 4 sheets to begin with and you want another one, they may make you give your paper back before they give you another set of scratch paper. Or they may allow you to simply copy what you have to the new scratch paper before you give it back. You just can't have an unlimited amount of paper in front of you. Why is this important? Because we said it's going to take you 10 to 15 minutes to do your brain dump. If you need a new scratch paper, maybe you keep your brain dump and you just use your scribble paper as a new, but if for any reason they take everything from you, you need another 10 minutes to write your brain dump down again. You've got, 49 processes, 10 knowledge areas, and 5 process groups. It just takes time to physically write all that down. So you want to make sure you're not using additional test taking time for your scratch paper. Maybe you've already got it in your 10 minutes of miscellaneous time, but just be aware of the amount of scratch paper you're using during your test. Another thing is your brain dump from the start may be this chart plus some equations. That's roughly one full scratch paper in itself. So whatever they give you, subtract 1 from that, and that's what you're left with. Next is you cannot go back to your locker. And this is important. You need to leave your watch, your jewelry, your phone, whatever, in that locker. But if you do have a snack that you brought, which you should, and you put it in that locker, expecting to come back and get it during the break, you're being for a rude surprise, and you go back with an empty stomach. So if you bring a power bar or a snack, whatever it is, don't put it in the locker. Find a utility closet somewhere and hide it. You can ask the person who's at the front desk what the good place is that you can keep that, but don't put it in your locker and don't put it in your car because you cannot leave the building. They don't let you just go walk out of the building and come back during the test. So if you left it in your locker, you left it in the car, that's not the best place to put it because you won't have access to it. Next is bring the appropriate clothes. The recommendation is that you bring a light sweater or a light jacket, nothing thick, because they may not let you bring that in the room. But in general, they try to keep the temperature at a comfortable level. But remember, you're in a room with a lot of other people. Everybody doesn't feel the same way. So if you don't need your light sweater, you can easily put it on the back of your chair. But if you do need it, you want to be as comfortable as possible. You don't want to be hungry. You don't want to be cold. So you just throw your sweater on and you continue like that, but you need to prepare for that just in case you need it. The next thing is the study material. You'll hear a lot of different things about what you should do, what you should not do as far as your study material goes. The correct answer to that question is you need to do whatever is appropriate for your learning style. Some people, you see a lot of discussions on the use of flashcards, and I'll just give you my 2 cents on flashcards. Flashcards indeed are something that you should use for things that have a discrete answer, such as the two things that I had to make sure I couldn't get wrong on the test. Number one was definitions. We'll go into that in a little more detail on parts 2 and 3, but definitions are as defined by the PMP. So you may be using things in your job, or you may have a different interpretation of the same word or phrase. It doesn't matter. The test is as defined by the PMP. So flashcards would indeed be a good thing to use if you're trying to retrain your brain from what your interpretation of the word is, the word or phrase is, versus the PMP. Equations are the second thing that you shouldn't get wrong on the test. It's an equation. You need to do it on your brain dump, or you need to pull it out of memory. That's something that's very discrete. It doesn't change. Things that you should not use your flashcards for or anything else on the test that is situational. And in part 3, we'll get over the material. We'll get onto the material, but the PMP test situations, you cannot use a flashcard to test your memory on situations. For that, you need to understand the concept. You need to know where you are in the project. You need to understand the concept to use different situations. And that's not something a flashcard will help you on. So you're going to hurt yourself that way. So if you like flashcards, equations and definitions, and maybe some other things are a great thing to use them for, but you don't want to rely on them. If you don't like flashcards, then by all means, don't use them. So hopefully this was helpful. If part 2 is not for you, go part 3 or look at all 3 parts. But hopefully, as far as the test prep part of it, I've given you some information that you can use, and I'll see you in part 3. We're going to go over the actual questions on the test and what you can expect while you're in the room. So thank you very much.